Head looks all right. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachari Shatarine
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
All right, Priya, do you know where Prabhupada is there? It's a very sacred spot.
This.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Oh,
We went 2 times this time.
oh.
We sat there for some time.
This is where Prabhupada used to live before he came to America. Living in Vrindavan,
One of the 7 main temples.
Radha Damodar temple.
There was a living room and a kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Goswami, Saman.
Okay, Hare Krishna Prabhus, welcome back to the Founder Acharya Essentials series.
This is the kitchen, right?
This is his kitchen, yeah. And the only reason we have this shot is because Jamuna Devi, my late great god sister, was serving Prabhupada every day. You notice she got these fancy plates and cups and yeah, that's not how Prabhupada ate when he was alone 10 years earlier in the early 60s. This is 72. Prabhupada's giving nectar devotion lectures every day in the courtyard at Radha Damodar temple. And then for lunch, Jamuna would, she would miss some of the lecture to leave early to go cook. And then she'd serve Prabhupada. And then one day she said to her friend Vishaka, the photographer, Vishaka, you've got to see what I'm seeing. This is how Prabhupada must have been for Prabhupada when he was all alone looking out his window toward Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. Bring your camera. So Vishaka came. Prabhupada actually posed for this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they left him alone to have his lunch. But beautiful, beautiful light, beautiful mood. And therefore we have this picture. So today we're going to start the Abhideya phase of our journey. So the first 3 lessons were Sambandha, where we deepened our awareness and relationship of Srila Prabhupada. The Abhidheya phase is when we deepen our commitment to his mission. So
How do you spell that?
Abhidheya, it's Abhidheya. Abhidheya. Sambandha is like the relationship. Abhidheya is executing the relationship. Prayojana is the last. That's tasting the fruit of the relationship, love.
Abhidheya means what?
It means executing the relation. It means acting in the relationship. Yeah. Okay. All right. So from the beginning, some his mission's roots. From the beginning, signs of Abhay Charan Dey's divine destiny had appeared. His birth by the Ganges on Dotsava, the celebration of Lord Krishna's advent, his childhood devotion to deity worship, especially Ratha Yatra, Lord Krishna's chariot parade, his pure devotee father's constant prayer that his son become a great preacher, and his stars and palm affirming that at the age of 70, he would cross the ocean, become a powerful spiritual leader, and open 108 temples. Can you imagine that? That was actually predicted. Srila Prabhupada, quote, one astrologer, sometimes he read my hand. He said in Hindi, Hukum chalbe, your hand speaks that your order will be executed. Okay, slide 2. All right. Oops. Yeah. By his own account, in 1922, when Srila Prabhupada and a friend first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was, quote, Gandhi's devotee. That's how Prabhupada described himself. Gandhi's devotee, dressed in the white khadi of an Indian nationalist and boycotting all things British. So when this, another good thing was just after Prabhupada left, all the artists were still together in Los Angeles. That was the North American BBT art department. They were the art department in all of ISKCON. And they did these, just like they did pictures for the Bhagavatams when Prabhupada was translating them. So they did pictures for the Lilamrita. So Naren is in the background in white, and up on our right is Abhay Charan Dey. And there's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And now wonderfully, ISKCON has that whole Altadanga property. And they turned it into a beautiful museum commemorating this divine meeting. Okay. So Prabhupada said, I was wearing white khadi because Gandhi said, don't buy the British cloth, just wear the Indian cloth. And boycotting all things British. One thing he boycotted very boldly was his degree. He passed his exams, but he didn't show up to get his British diploma. So he was surprised by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's first words to them. Quote, this is as they were still bowing down, he and Naren. You are educated young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world? Whoa. They hadn't even risen from obeisances. So already Saraswati Thakur is saying this. Impressed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's bold conviction, Abhay nonetheless felt compelled to test him. So Prabhupada told us this is what he said to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Quote, who will hear your Chaitanya's message? We are a dependent country. First, India must become independent. How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule? Unquote. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied that Krishna consciousness, the original pure consciousness of every living being, was too urgent to wait for a change in politics. Misidentifying with matter, suffering humanity was forever pursuing freedom through temporary, earthbound movements, including Gandhi's. but reconnecting everyone to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our dearmost friend, constituted the highest welfare work. Prabhupada said that's the only time he was ever defeated. It's Guru Maharaj defeated his nationalist argument. Struck by this masterful reply, Abhai's allegiance, his loyalty, flew straight from Gandhi to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, whose mission would soon reignite Lord Chaitanya's divine movement throughout India. Quote, I accepted him immediately, Prabhupada later recalled, not officially, but in my heart. Unquote. So this is 1922. Prabhupada wasn't initiated officially until 33, 11 years. But Prabhupada said that was the real initiation. Already a husband, father, and office manager at a Calcutta pharmaceutical company, Abhai decided to start his own pharmacy, expand the business, and also contribute to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mission. So in 1923, he moved his family to Allahabad. Could you click and see if this, oh no, okay, go back, that's all right. I thought there might have been words in there. He decided to move his family to Allahabad and started Prayag Pharmacy, which soon flourished under his diligent management. His sense of mission would also flourish as he studied the writings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his Gaudiya predecessors, the disciplic lineage from Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so that was the introduction. Any questions so far? Comments?
Prabhupada moved in 23. So.
Yeah, in 23, he what happened was is that he was working for because he refused a diploma from University of Calcutta, Scottish Churches College in the University of Calcutta system. He refused a diploma, so he wasn't working. Although he was already a family man, he was still living at home. So a family friend, Dr. Kartik Chandra Bose, came to, who was the family doctor for the days, said, and he always liked Abhai because he's a very intelligent boy. So he came one day to the home of the days and said, what is Abhai doing? He said to Gaur Mohan, and Gaur Mohan said, well, he's not working yet because he refused his diploma. And so he doesn't have the certificate, right? So, but Dr. Bose said, well, send him to me. I will hire him. I need him. I need his intelligence to manage because he started the first pharmaceutical, like, big operation might have been in India, but at least in Bengal. And so it was called Bengal Chemical. And although Abhai was just fresh out of university, Dr. Bose knew how intelligent he was. So he put him in charge of the whole office. He was the office manager. And there was a lot of jealousy amongst the people that had been with Dr. Bose. Why is this young guy, over us? But Dr. Bose said, no, he's good. But there was a lot of jealousy. And then Abhai thought, well, it's been prophesied that I'm supposed to be wealthy. So I think I know this business now. I will ask Dr. Bose if he could help set me up with my own business in Allahabad, Prayag. So Dr. Bose said, yes, I think you'll do very well. And I'll sell you, wholesale, the pharmaceuticals, and you can sell them retail. And this way you can start your business. So, yeah, that was in 23. Yeah, he was married. And I think by 1918, he was actually married because they get their first child in 21. Shubha Lakshmi, the daughter. And then in 22, he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and he was working. But in 23, he just lasted a year in Calcutta. So the next section is called Initiation. In 1928, when senior sannyasis approached Abai for help starting a branch of the Gaudiya mission in Allahabad, he was delighted to contribute his contacts and resources, and later became a favorite speaker and singer at the temple. So one Atulananda Brahmachari, who later took sannyas, he had heard there was a very nice Vaishnav living in Allahabad where they were trying to start a center. So he somehow tracked Prabhupada down and he said, "Can you help us? We hear you're a very nice Vaishnav and that you're a good businessman. So we need help organizing and starting a center here." So Abai Babu said, "Oh yes, because he was already reading Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's books. He was getting interested, in helping the mission. And the more he helped, the more he was visiting where they were organized, where they had a temporary place. And he was speaking and he was singing, even though he wasn't even initiated yet. He became a favorite speaker and singer at the temple. By 1932, it had been 10 years since Abai met the saintly person he revered as his spiritual master. So it's 4 years later now, 32. That autumn, when he heard that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was leading a massive parikrama around Vrindavan, Brajmandal Parikram, the sacred place of Krishna's early pastimes, he briefly broke free from his business to join the pilgrims. Soon after he arrived at Koshi, the devotees were given the choice of visiting the nearby Sheshashayi Vishnu deity or staying to hear Srila Bhaktisiddhanta give his final talk before leaving the party. So it was Sridhar Maharaj, who was a senior sannyasi there, was saying, okay, Yatris, tonight, Guru Maharaj said this is his last night with the party, and you can either stay to hear him speak, or you can go and see this big Vishnu deity, these big spectacular Vishnu deities. Yes, in Koshi, near Koshi was the deity. So Prabhupada said, I thought, what will I see at this Sheshashayi? Let me hear Guru Maharaj. So that was the beginning of Bhaktisiddhanta noticing this person liked to hear. Srila Prabhupada, quote, "At that time, I think only 10 or 12 men remained. Everybody else went out to see the big deity. And I thought it wise, what can I see at this Sheshashayi? Let me hear what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati will speak. Let me hear." So that was in 32. In 1933, while Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was visiting his mission's new branch, so they actually opened up a new temple, new branch at Allahabad, the local leader recommended Abhai for initiation. Okay, next. Yeah, so there is Diksha. And Prabhupada got first and second together. Boom. Although it was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that divided the two into divided initiation into steps. But he liked Abhai, he thought. He said, yes, quote, "Yes, I shall initiate this boy," Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. "He is very nice. He hears me very patiently. He does not go away." As Prabhupada said, I would hear Guru Maharaj speak, and he was speaking in a very high philosophical way. Sometimes I could follow, but a lot of times I couldn't follow, but I just loved to hear him speak. And so Bhaktisiddhanta noticed this. He does not go away. Although Abhai's wife chose not to attend this ceremony, because that's where the Days were living, in Allahabad, but she wasn't interested in the mission, chose not to attend the ceremony, a brother and sister of Prabhupada, they came from Calcutta. A brother and sister were present as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave Abhai the initiated name. You know, Haripriya, what Prabhupada's Diksha name, his initiated name was? You know? It's almost like his birth name. His name at birth was Abhay Charan Day. So Bhaktisiddhanta just added one little new part to the name. You know? Abhay Charanaravinda, one who was fearless. Gave Abai the initiated name Abai Charan Arvinda Das, the servant of one fearless at Lord Krishna's lotus feet. He also gave his capable disciple instructions to study deeply Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada would later summarize as the nectar of devotion, the quote, law book for devotional service. That's what Prabhupada always told us. This is our law book. Srila Prabhupada recalled, quote, from 1920, this is very interesting. From 1922, I got the impression of preaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult in the good sense of the word. That was the initiation by my Guru Maharaj in 22, when he got the impression of preaching. Then officially I was initiated in 1933. So Prabhupada, looking back, said the real initiation, when he said I accepted him immediately, not officially, but in my heart, was when he got this seed of spreading Krishna consciousness from his Guru Maharaj. You are educated, young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world?
So in Calcutta, Prabhupada got initiated.
No, in Allahabad.
Yeah.
You got, but Prabhupada considered the real initiation was when he first met his Guru Maharaj, when he accepted him, yes, in his heart. But officially, yeah, it was in 11 years later in Allahabad. Over the next few years, Abai would meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta perhaps a half dozen times. Yet the talks were intimate enough to raise eyebrows. Srila Prabhupada, quote, sometimes I would talk freely with him, and the God brothers would become angry. They would say, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Because Bhaktisiddhanta, when he would see, on the few times that they actually met physically, Bhaktisiddhanta, he would call him over and he would have Prabhupada, Abai, sit right next to him on the same level. So the God brothers were like, well, who does he think he is? But this is what Bhaktisiddhanta wanted. He wanted him right with him by his side. So Prabhupada said, I thought, I may be a fool, but what can I do? With my Guru Maharaj, we would talk so many private things. I was only a Grihasta, but whenever I came, my Guru Maharaj would be very glad to talk with me. He would confide into his disciple because he could see the special character of the person.
He was married at that time.
He was married in 1918. And in 19, now this is 33, 34.
15 years.
Yeah, he was in that Grihasta ashram, you'll see later, for 36 years. He was married. Okay, the next section is called Blessings. Although an astrologer had predicted Abai could become one of the wealthiest men in India, in 1934, bad debtors, people who weren't paying their bills, and cutthroat competitors, people who were underpricing Prabhupada, obliged him to turn over the debts and accounts of the Prayag pharmacy to his supplier and former employer in Calcutta. That was Kartik Chandra Bose. What happened was Prabhupada was going broke in Allahabad, Prayag, because Prabhupada was too generous with his debtors. He wasn't giving them hard and fast deadlines. And so they were just forever late or not paying what they owed him. And therefore, Prabhupada couldn't pay his bills to Kartik Bose. So he finally got a hold of Dr. Bose. He said, I don't know what's going to happen with this because I'm not getting paid, therefore I can't pay you. So Dr. Bose said, let me come. I will come to Allahabad and I'll see what the situation is. So he looked at the books. He saw it was just what Abai was saying. And he said, look, I'll tell you what, I'll assume all these debts. I'll take them over. Because it was his pharmaceuticals that Prabhupada couldn't pay for. And at least you'll be debt-free. I mean, you won't have a business anymore, but at least you'll be debt-free. So Prabhupada let him do it because Prabhupada had a plan. And okay, I'll just read it. It's right in here. After arranging a small pharmaceutical works to support his family in Allahabad. So Prabhupada, he told Radharani Day, his wife. He said, "Don't worry, Devi, I will, I'm gonna let you and the children," he had a few kids now, a couple of kids. "You and the children stay here in Prayag. Myself and my brother," he had a brother, "and we're gonna go to Bombay. And this is where the action is. This is where we're gonna hit the big time. Producing and buying and selling pharmaceuticals." So after arranging a small pharmaceutical works to support his family in Allahabad, Abai and a brother ventured to Bombay, seeking new sales and production opportunities. Lord Krishna, it turned out, had greater opportunities in mind. So this is what happened in Bombay. As in Allahabad, Abai met senior Gaudiya Math sannyasis. It was Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, who asked him to help them start a mission branch in Bombay, just like he had been approached in Allahabad to help them start. So Prabhupada, yeah, he was sure. Although he was really trying to use all this time to, make it in the pharmaceutical world, but still his heart was in preaching. His preaching increasing since initiation, Abai soon helped them launch a successful center. On the evening, so that was in 34, and then in the 35 now, on the evening of February 25th, 1935, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's 61st birthday, Abai delivered an English speech and poem to the members of the Bombay Gaudiya Math, capturing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his mission so eloquently that a godbrother dubbed him Kavi, or learned poet. So Prabhupada was so proficient in English, speaking and writing, that he was selected by Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga to give the keynote address at the launch, at the grand opening of the Bombay Center. So he gave a speech called The Universal Teacher, and then he also wrote a poem, which was even more pleasing to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Especially pleasing to his spiritual master was the couplet. Let's go to the next. Yeah. One more. Is creeper blessed? Yeah. There's Prabhupada as a young man. And that was done from a picture. There was some photos, and then this was a painting done from a photo. Especially pleasing to his spiritual master was the couplet, "Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast moved." So absolute is sentient. Anybody know who can tell us what sentient means? Capable of what?
SENTIENT,
Yes, there it is.
the one that has a conscious.
Conscious, and if you're conscious, what do you have? You have senses,
Your feelings.
feelings, very good. Perceptions. It's not impersonal or void, the ultimate source of everything. So, I mean, the whole poem is many stanzas. It's a wonderful poem that Prabhupada wrote in 1935. And years later, 34 years later, 1969, when the devotees were opening up London, when Prabhupada was in London at the Berry Place address, the first address of the London City Yatra, Guru Das, one of the disciples who opened up London, he went to the British Museum and he found a whole bunch of old harmonists, the Gaudiya Math English language periodical, the harmonists. And in one of the harmonists, he found this poem. And he brought it, I guess he copied it and he brought it to Prabhupada. He said, "Prabhupada, look what I found. I found a poem you wrote in 1935. And Prabhupada looked at it and said, "Oh, I thought this was lost." And then he read the poem, "Adore, adore ye that holy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May, when he appeared at Puri, that holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace." It's just so beautiful, English poem. And of all the stanzas, this is the one, Bhaktisiddhanta, he would keep by his side. And whenever guests would come, he would say, just see how my disciple has captured the spirit of my mission. And he said, I'm giving it away now. I'll just read. And Prabhupada actually changed a word in this stanza. Anybody know what word Prabhupada changed? Prabhupada is the origin of editorial changes to his own writing.
The word move.
Yes.
Remove.
Yeah, he changed it to removed. So you'll see both versions. Because, yeah, with poetic license, you can sort of understand what Prabhupada's saying. You know, thou hast moved, thou hast removed. But
Made
Prabhupada,
it more clear.
yeah, he made it more clear because his English was developing. It was improving. So Prabhupada added, he put removed. There you go. When Abai submitted the speech and poem to the mission's English language journal, The Harmonist, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed the editor, whatever he writes, publish it. This is huge blessing. This is the first of 3 major blessings Prabhupada received that year in the February 35, after the Vyasa Puja. Immediately everybody realized, wow, Bhai Charanarvinda Prabhu, Guru Maharaj wants everyone to know what he's writing, what he's thinking, what he's speaking. And so that was a big blessing. Now that was the first one in the winter. Now go to the summer of the same year. That July, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came to install the deity of Lord Krishna in Bombay. So the center was open, but now Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is personally going to install the deity in Bombay and was pleased with the progress of the center. The leader said, now the leader was Bhakti Saranga, he was the Mahant, he was the head of the Mat. The leader said that much of the work was due to Abhay Babu, who had collected funds and helped establish the new branch. Quote, why is Abhay living separately? He asked of Bhaktisiddhanta. He should be president of this Bombay center. He was lobbying, he was advocating for Abhay Charanarvinda, Abhay Babu, to be the head, not him, but Abhay Babu. But Bhaktisiddhanta gave a very interesting reply. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied, it is better that he is living outside your company. He will do. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. You don't have to recommend him. Unquote. Now listen to this. I never knew this until I just started doing research. This happened not long ago in the research. The research never ends. Mystified by what he heard his spiritual master had said, because Prabhupada wasn't there when Bhaktisiddhanta said this to Bhakti Saranga. He just heard about it later. Mystified by what he heard his spiritual master had said, Prabhupada later reflected, quote, that means he was so kind that he expected that I shall do something. That was my asset, his blessing. And Prabhupada said this in January 77, right toward the end of his life. That was my asset. He's giving all credit to his Guru Maharaj. That was my asset, his blessing. And I was thinking that this mission must be done very nicely. So desire was there and maybe blessing was there. Yes, there was no question of qualification. So that was a big blessing. He will do everything. It was like a prophecy, right? So that was the summer. And then the fall, this is really heavy blessing, heavy, intense. November 1935, once again found Abai with his spiritual master on Vrindavan Parikram. This time at the most sacred place for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Radha Kund. And you see a picture of this. I don't think I included in the slides, but in the Lilamrita you see Prabhupada walking with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta at Radha Kund, and Prabhupada's holding on to his little boy. And then the sannyasi is behind them. But Bhaktisiddhanta wanted to confide in his householder disciple again. walking with his intimate disciple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta confided in Abhay grave concerns about dissension among their ranks. Since a wealthy Calcutta patron had constructed a palatial headquarters for the mission, his senior disciples had been quarreling over who would have the best room. If in his presence his leading preachers were becoming attached to position and opulence, what would happen in his absence? Deeply concerned, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to Abhay, Agun jvalve, there will be fire. One day there would be fire in the Calcutta Gaudiya mission, and that fire of party interests, not an actual physical fire, but worse, that fire of party interests would spread and destroy. Slide. There it is. Yeah.
So Prabhu, like, so in 1935 only Srila Prabhupada wrote the poem to Brahma.
Yeah, that was in the winter.
And the same 1935 we met Bhaktisiddhanta.
And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came to the Allahabad, in the Bombay Gaudiya Math to install the deity, but Prabhupada wasn't there at the time. He was traveling or trying to, drum up his pharmaceutical business.
And again in 1935.
And again, the third major blessing was that fall in Radhakund in November. Yeah.
Was what?
In November 35, they're at Radhakund and Rajmandal Parikrama. And Bhaktisiddhanta, listen to this. Here's the, you're going to see what the blessing is this time. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta then said directly to Abhay, Amar cha chilakichubai karana. I had a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, because he was saying, we had this big opulent temple. Now they're fighting over the rooms. They're getting distracted by opulences and money. And if you ever get money, print books.
I'm confused. Where was this palatial temple?
It was in Calcutta. They started it at Altadanga Junction in Calcutta. That was the first place. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, we were so happy there. Our overhead was 200 rupees a month, boss, for everything, food and rent or whatever it was. And then this wealthy patron, what's his name? Jagabandhu. He was a wealthy businessman, like we say Crorepati, one of these. He built this big marble palace at Bagh Bazar Junction, and they moved there. And then because it was so opulent, a lot of the people got, starstruck, or what do you say? Enamored by the wealth. And they started fighting over who's going to have the nicest facilities, right? I mean, these are the leading sannyasis, supposedly. So Bhaktisiddhanta, he was saying, I wish I could sell the marble off the walls and just print books with that money. If you ever get money, print books. So there's the origin of Prabhupada's emphasis on book production and book distribution, is this dramatic moment at Radhakund, the most sacred spot in the universe for Gaudiya Vaishnavas.
1935.
35.
So still they have that temple Bombay.
I doubt it, because when the whole thing splintered, well, we're going to get to that. So that grave blessing highlighted a grave reality in Abhay's life. Although he was trying to execute his spiritual master's mission by becoming wealthy, that was his plan. Okay, I'm supposed to be wealthy. Well, let me just become like another Birla. That's what one astrologer said. You could be another Birla. And then when the kids are grown and the family phase is finished, then with my accumulated wealth, I'll do the mission. That was his plan. Okay. But that grave blessing that Bhaktisiddhanta says, if you ever get money, print books, highlighted a grave reality in Abhay's life. Although he was trying to execute his spiritual master's mission by becoming wealthy, his Bombay business ventures were not bearing fruit. It wasn't working. Krishna was blocking this. He made Prabhupada wealthy in another way later. Were not bearing fruit. Despite Abhay's assurance he had new plans to expand, his situation especially disturbed his wife. Whenever Abai visited his family in Allahabad, he tried to involve her in preaching programs at home. But when interested guests would come, she stayed with the children in another room, sipping British tea. You know, that's famous tea or me, that's coming up later. Yeah, Prabhupada told us she was a very nice, pious lady, but she had no interest in the mission that I joined. She didn't want to be a missionary's wife. She wanted to be a, nice, stay home, worship the deity, raise the children. And she was faithful to him, it wasn't that she was unfaithful, but she just didn't want any part of Prabhupada's missionary zeal. Okay, so confirmation is the next. Yeah, all right, slide. Just the one, yeah, that's good. Although Abai had already contributed much to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's Gaudiya mission, donating money, helping launch the Allahabad and Bombay centers, submitting excellent English offerings, in December 1936, he wrote his spiritual master a letter asking if there was some way he could contribute more. Okay, click again. All right. Yes, so how about Rasakil, you want to read this?
I'm a householder. Sometimes I give monetary help, while I cannot give you direct service. Is there any particular service I can do?
Okay. Prabhupada later recalled the highlights of his spiritual master's reply. Yeah, now stay there. There you go. Gonna move it. So Prabhupada, everything we know about this came from Prabhupada. He would tell us, usually at Bhaktisiddhanta's either appearance or disappearance days. There's about 10 or 11 or 12 recordings of these appearing and disappearing days. And that's when Prabhupada would reminisce about his Guru Maharaj, especially publicly. So Prabhupada he just told us a little bit about what he wrote him, but then he told us more about what Bhaktisiddhanta replied. And here's what Prabhupada said his Guru Maharaj replied to him. This all happened in December 36, just weeks before Bhaktisiddhanta disappeared. Quote, I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate, to instill the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings in the people in general, as well as philosophers and religionists. So he saw the wide range and capacity of his disciple. He could speak plainly to the common man in a very sophisticated way to educated people. So that was the excerpt Prabhupada told us. Little more than a fortnight after Abai read this letter, his spiritual master passed away. The same instruction he had received at their first meeting, which was, hey, you're educated young man, why don't you spread Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world? That was 1922. But by 36, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta saw in the person of this Abhayacharan and Vidadas, somebody who could actually do it. Okay. The same instruction he had received at their first meeting was now confirmed. Another confirmation followed while Abai was reading a Bhagavad Gita commentary, stating that one must accept the order of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order was now the very purpose of his life. Prabhupada told us this was in a couple of years later after his Guru Maharaj passed away. He was reading a commentary on the Gita by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And his commentary to Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. And in his commentary, Vishwanath says that this means one must accept the order of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. And Prabhupada said, when I read that, I realized I have to do this. I actually have to go to the West. I have to do this mission. He took it so seriously. Yeah. All right. Any more questions or comments about that confirmation?
Quick question, may I ask?
Yeah.
Why was English necessary and who were the audience?
Why was English necessary? Yeah, I think
Who
we-
were his audience?
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on that a little bit before. Starting with Bhaktivinoda Thakur and continuing with Bhaktisiddhanta, they identified English as the rising star among all the languages of the world, the language that was going to be the dominant world language, and still that's true today. So they wanted to preach in this language to reach the most people possible. And the immediate target audience during the time of the Gaudiya Math, the Gaudiya mission in India, was British intellectuals, because the Brits were always trying to convince the Indians that they were inferior, that their shastras were mythology, that really it's all about, you know, Shakespeare in the Bible is really the superior literature and superior in thought and expression. So Bhaktisiddhanta was always encouraging his educated disciples to develop their English preaching and speaking, writing and their speaking. So Prabhupada was proficient in English. So yeah, he encouraged him. Okay, the next section is called War. The quote, fire in the mission broke out almost immediately. So Bhaktisiddhanta disappeared. Sometimes you see on New Year's Eve, 1936, and sometimes you see it as New Year's Day, 37. Why is that? Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta passed away at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and it was January, so the sun hadn't risen yet. And the Vaishnavas marked the new day with the sunrise, so the sun had not yet risen. So sometimes you see December 31st, although it had passed midnight already, but the solar day hadn't started yet. But actually it was the you know, the new day by the, you know, past midnight, like that. The quote, fire in the mission that Bhaktisiddhanta had told Abhay about just 14 months earlier, broke out almost immediately, although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had clearly ordered his disciples to form a governing body and work, quote, conjointly. You don't replace the founder Acharya, you simply cooperate to serve his mission. Some leaders began competing to replace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as the mission's supreme spiritual authority, as well as the controller of its assets. So by the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's demise, on the cusp of the new year in 37, there were already people kind of waiting in the wings, we say, you know, licking their lips, licking their chops, waiting to, you know, just seize the opportunity and become the new head honcho. But that's complete misunderstanding. You said, just like Prabhupada told us, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate to keep this institution going after I leave. And so he's told us, you know, he carry on initiating, carry on the parampara, but the founder Acharya still retains, he's still the supreme authority, you know, by his vani, by his words, his instructions. But these overambitious people, they began competing. There were 2 or 3, you know, camps, parties. And the fighting ended up in the courts. It was a disgrace. You know, this great Gaudiya mission that had revived Gaudiya Vaishnavism all over the subcontinent of India, and 60,000 disciples Srila Bhaktisiddhanta initiated, at least Harinam. And yeah, 64 mutts, although he established all over India. As soon as he left, the whole thing disintegrated into camps. The fighting ended up in the courts. I mean, can you imagine? It's terrible, right? But because none of the parties was authorized, none of them were doing what Bhaktisiddhanta wanted them to do. The unified Gaudiya mission Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had led throughout India and beyond, because he did send preachers to Europe, fragmented into isolated temples. Quote, living outside, that's what Bhaktisiddhanta had said, he's living outside your company. Prabhupada was above the fray. Living outside, Abhay felt inspired and protected by the order Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had given him. Yet the implosion of the Gaudiya mission was heartbreaking. You can imagine how it was so heartbreaking to see that glorious mission just dissolve into infighting. In 1938, Prabhupada dropped his Bombay ventures, so he gave up. He could see Krishna didn't want this. He tried 3 times to restart, his business, and 3 times Krishna smashed it. There was a theft, there was a fire, and the final one was plain old incompetence on the part of his family members. To maintain, he began to produce so he just moved back to Calcutta and just opened up, Abhay Charande and Sons, a little pharmaceutical works, just producing enough to maintain, just in his flat. And the Sons weren't even helping him. That was a kind of an aspirational title, Abhay Charande and Son. They weren't even interested in helping Papa with a mission, or even with, like I write here, deepening his study of his spiritual master's books. He spoke Krishna conscious philosophy to whoever would listen, determined to somehow carry on Lord Chaitanya's movement. In 1939, Abhay wrote an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, indicating his intention to translate and comment on the entire text. Impressed by Abhay's writing and preaching, 2 sannyasi godbrothers gave him the title, remember I told you, what do they call him? Bhaktivedanta. One who knows the end of knowledge, devotion to Krishna. Kavi was earlier when he wrote that poem. Yeah. One who knows the end of knowledge, devotion to Krishna. Now, when World War II broke out that year, that was 1939 in Europe, England drafted India into the war effort, because India was still under the British Raj. In Calcutta, Abhay would endure bombs and man-made food shortages as he and a few close godbrothers, survivors of the Gaudiya mission's disunion, continued to study, write, and preach the remedy for all suffering, Krishna consciousness. Okay, another slide. In 1944, on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's birthday anniversary, so it was Prabhupada chose Vyasa Puja Day of his spiritual master, Abhay launched an English devotional journal. There it is, Back to Godhead, but you see the date on this masthead, that was a much later edition, because 58, that was when he actually got some graphics going, but the first edition was just, straight print, and it was hard to do that because, as I write here, offering spiritual solutions to material life's endless problems, BTG saw print only twice that year, owing to the Indian government's severe rationing of supplies, including paper. So he produced one issue in, February 44, but the Indian government wouldn't let him use paper to print another issue until later that year. Finally, Prabhupada convinced somebody in the government that this is important stuff. And so he came out with another issue. So they were rationing everything, including paper. Abhay's messages were scarcely noticed. In other words, the articles, much less valued. And then even less so at home. After the war ended in 1945, Abhay saw a good opportunity to expand his pharmaceutical operation in Lucknow. Oh yeah, there was one more attempt in Lucknow. You know where that is, right? UP, yeah. 600 miles northwest of Calcutta. With enough profit potential to expand BTG and better situate his family, Abhay made a big capital investment. He invested 20,000 rupees in this building. Yes, in this building that had big potential for it really to take off. But when he called the family's best servant to come help him from Calcutta, the family wouldn't let him go. No, we need him. We need Gauranga. His name was Gauranga. We need Gauranga Prabhu here. Abai, okay, but what, yeah, the family wouldn't let him go. Indifferent to Abai's preaching ambitions, they didn't care about Papa's preaching ambitions, or even an opportunity to improve their own living standard. They weren't interested in, they thought it was pie in the sky. Oh yeah, he's always talking us how he's going to make it big, but here we are, we're still struggling. The family he was supporting was now becoming a useless burden. Even both materially and spiritually, they were becoming useless. There's an interesting letter from Prabhupada to Gauranga in November 45. And Prabhupada's just revealing his mind. He said, I don't have no more interest in these people. They're becoming they're not interested in building the business or in devotionally. So why am I laboring so hard just to maintain them? But he dutifully kept doing it for another 9 years until the tea or me. Okay.
So when he was writing for weekly, so Prabhupada was writing by his own, he was writing for the Gaudiya Math.
No, there was no more Gaudiya Math as a mission. There were just individual isolated temples.
So he himself started.
Yeah, this was his creative. This is the first face. This is the first idea of preaching. He started a magazine because he was a good writer, and he was up on the news, and he was interacting with people. He was a businessman, so he was writing. The articles were giving spiritual solutions to material problems, which, in those days, especially after they got Swaraj in 47, freedom at midnight in Nehru, they wanted to copy the West. They weren't interested in their Vedic heritage or anything like that. They just wanted to become, it's like today, what do you see when you go to India? You see these big banners. India is great. What do they mean? We can be bigger materialists than the West. I remember going to Mayapur one year, about 10 years ago, landing at Subhash Bose Airport. And the first thing I see was a big banner. And it said, "Welcome to India. Feel the passion." And I thought, oh no, I came to get away from the passion of the West. And this is what you're becoming? Come on, give me a break, will you? But that's their idea of progress, right? Being more Western than the Westerners. Okay, so around this time, this is mid-40s, just after the war ended, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta began appearing to Abai in dreams. Prabhupada began having dreams of his Guru Maharaj, asking him to enter the renounced stage of life and preach full time. Yet he felt unprepared to live as simply as his renunciant godbrothers. So, Prabhupada would later recall, those dreams horrified him. Oh, I was horrified, Prabhupada said, I was horrified. Guru Maharaj wants me to take sannyas. He couldn't imagine himself living like Bhakti Saranga Maharaj or Sridhar Maharaj. They were too austere because he had been a family man. He had grown up in a house and then he became a family man right away. But those dreams took on more significance as his ashram began to unravel. Uncooperative though his family was, he dutifully continued to maintain them while looking for opportunities to advance his mission, all alone, right? He told us later, I was crying alone in the wilderness. Nobody was interested in back to God. This is 1940s. This is, he started 44, he started the magazine. And then he's, if you read the Lilamrita in the 50s, he was still doing it, going tea stall to tea stall in Delhi. And then they would say, no time, right? And then he wrote an article, No Time, the Disease of the Modern Man. All the time in the world to read, the Hindustan Times, but no time to read Bhakti Gita because their values are all upside down. And the last part of the presentation tonight, I call the spark. Although victorious in the war, Britain would soon lose India to Mahatma Gandhi's nationalist movement. The triumph of his former hero gave Abhay an idea. In July 1947, Abhay, this is a month before officially Swaraj. In July 1947, Abhay wrote Gandhi a letter. An excerpt follows. So this is what Prabhupada actually wrote Gandhi. This is an excerpt from the letter. I am your unknown friend. When you're reading the Paranjan pastime, you're going to hear this. Did you?
Yeah,
Did you get there yet? Yeah. Avigyata and the super soul. I am your unknown friend. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, they were calling him Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi, but Prabhupada's saying, look, real Mahatma, he preaches the real, true Gita. You shall, if you don't do this, if you don't retire from politics, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler, Tojo, all these characters from World War II met with. This is like a prophecy, right? Prabhupada later recalled, quote, I wanted to start this movement from India. I even requested Mahatma Gandhi that, Mahatmaji, you have got some respect all over the world, and you are known as a great student of Bhagavad Gita. Now you have got your Swaraj. The Britishers have gone away. Let us preach Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada said, my letter might have reached him or not reached him. The secretaries might have rejected, but then he was killed. Slide. Yeah. This must have been quite a, even though Prabhupada is pure devotee, it must have been quite a dramatic moment for Prabhupada to see his boyhood hero killed. And just like he had predicted, if you don't give up politics, it's going to get you, going to get the better of you. Abhay's letter now proved prophetic. Although he had hoped to engage Gandhi to advance Lord Chaitanya's mission, Gandhi's demise would soon spark the articulation of his mission's plan. As Prabhupada later recalled, I had my plans and Krishna had his. So what that plan is, you have to wait for the next lesson. But yeah, so. Okay, Prabhus, Hare Krishna, I'll be very happy to hear your questions and comments now from the live audience or from our live
Just one question.
online.
I guess this is like from the beginning of the lesson, when you were talking about how Prabhupada met Siddhanta of the Nature Center. So you said like Prabhupada tested him basically with that phrase. So was it like a genuine question, or was it more?
No, okay, the question is, because Master Kelly is far from the mic here, is when Abhay Charan Dey, the person who became our Prabhupada, felt obliged to test the sadhu, was it a real test, or was it just some kind of rhetorical question, something that was, it was a real question. And why was that? Because Prabhupada told us that from the time he was small in his house in Calcutta, his father was very generous, you might say to a fault, with sadhus. Anybody who was wearing the dress, saffron dress, Gaur Mohan would feed. He would say, he would say, oh, yeah, they would come to the door begging. And but they really weren't sadhus, because a real sadhu, he won't just, beg japatis, but he'll give knowledge, right? He'll be a nice exchange. The householder would welcome a real sadhu in, because then he'd be enlightened by the sage, the sadhus. but Prabhupada said, I noticed that all these people that my father was, feeding, they weren't sadhus. They would go right after, feeding them, then they would go outside and then they would light up a bidi. They would smoke. And even Prabhupada said sometimes, they would even, the dress they had was kind of like their beggar dress. They weren't even sadhus, and then they just change into pants or something. Change it. So they were just imposters. So Prabhupada said, my impression of sadhus was very bad. So when his friend Narendranath Mullik said to him, Abai, we, meaning his group of friends, we need you, we've met this amazing sadhu, an Altadanga, and we think he's really an amazing person, but you're the leader. Prabhupada said, somehow or other, I was always the leader of my group. So we want your opinion. We're reserving judgment until we hear what you think. So Prabhupada said, I don't want to go. I've seen what these so-called sadhus are. So Prabhupada said, but my friend dragged me. Prabhupada used that word. He dragged me to Altadanga. It was only because, they were friends, as I said, into their going back to the baby carriages. They were pushed by their mothers in their baby carriages, or the British word is pram, and the prams. That I said, okay, so let's go. Take me, let's get this over with. So then Prabhupada said, and then we went to this Altadanga junction, and then we went up, it was up on the roof. That's where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had a little kutir up on the roof. And then, and that's where he was having darshan. It was a warm night. It was summer, I guess. And so we, because it's the custom to bow down before a sadhu, even though he was skeptical. So he and Naren bowed down. And then while they were still getting up, Bhaktisiddhanta said, you are educated young men. Just from their dress and their behavior, he could see that they were cultured. Why don't you spread Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world? He didn't even know them, right? So that triggered the question, because Prabhupada said, I was a Gandhi. I was Gandhi's devotee. I was a nationalist. I was wearing khadi, and I had boycotted my degree, and so he was putting it like that. Although he was still, of course, a Chaitanya Vaishnava, a Gaudiya Vaishnava. But he said in college, it became rather thin, my deity worship and sadhana. But anyway, so he said he really meant it. We had, we're a captive nation. No one's going to listen to somebody who's under the boot of the British Raj. First, we have to get our independence, then maybe people will listen to us. And so what did Bhaktisiddhanta reply? Do you remember, Rasikela?
Yes, not word for word.
Yeah, that's a gist.
The gist was that this message is too important to
Wait for
prevent
a
us to
change
wait for-
in
for
politics.
situation.
It's the urgent need of every living being. So Abhay Charan Dey was struck with wonder. First time somebody who defeated him in an argument. He was a fervent nationalist. I'm sure he had all his talking
Could you
points.
just repeat that quote?
From Bhaktisiddhanta?
Yeah, that she just said, because both of you were talking and I couldn't catch it.
Okay, well, we're paraphrasing, but Prabhupada told us that Bhaktisiddhanta said, well, let me see if I got it in a quote. Or if I just paraphrased it. I think it's a quote from Prabhupada. Yeah, going back.
Maybe in the beginning.
Yeah, it's right in the beginning, practically. All right. Okay. Yeah. No, it was a paraphrase. Okay, Prabhupada, what Prabhupada challenged him with is a quote direct from Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, who will hear your Chaitanya's message? It's a very challenge. We are a dependent country. First, India must become independent. He was a Gandhian, right? How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule?
Particularly said your,
Yeah, your Chaitanya's message. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied that, and I went back, I remember when I made this script, I went back to Lalitamrita to see if it was a quote, but it was also paraphrased by Sathrup Maharaj. He replied that Krishna consciousness, the original pure consciousness of every living being, was too urgent for it to wait for a change in politics. Misidentifying with matter, suffering humanity was forever pursuing freedom through temporary, earth-bound movements, including Gandhi's. But reconnecting everyone to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our dearmost friend, constituted the highest welfare work. So that's a combination of Lilamrita and my own phrasing there, but that's the gist. So,
Prabhu, Prabhupada, when he met Bhaktisiddhanta, before that, his family, his father always worshipped Radha Krishna.
yeah, they were Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Lord Chaitanya.
So they were worshiping Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, they were, yeah. But it's just, and then Prabhupada as a little boy, he was having a serious Ratha Yatra. You remember that pastime? They would start to, the neighbors would start to laugh, and little Abai was, no, this is real Ratha Yatra. This is not play. So he was serious, you know, and the prediction was there, you know, right in the beginning. This is a Mahatma. He's going to cross the ocean, open up 108 centers, and but that's just the way Krishna, you know, prepared him. He, as I mentioned previously, Gaur Mohan Dey wanted his son to be educated, so he let him go to this, you know, British-run school. And Prabhupada, he would say, even when he was taking these courses, he would say to Naren and his friends who were going to the classes too, I'm not really interested in this. You know, they were learning everything from Aristotle to, you know, the existentialists and philosophy. He was focusing on philosophy, economics, Sanskrit, English, and he was diligent. He got good grades. He was, you know, he passed his exams and everything, but he wasn't enamored of it. He was just doing it to get educated, so he could live in the world, and he was going to be a householder, and yeah. So don't think that Prabhupada was at Karmi. He was just doing, it was Prabhupada's whole life, from the moment he was born on the day after Janmashtami on Nandotsava, right up to the end when Prabhupada showed us how to leave this world in Vrindavan. He just lived the perfect Vaishnava life, which is really encouraging, because in our lives too, we go through different phases and different circumstances. So Rasakeli's going to college, you know, you're working, I'm retired, whatever. I'm Uncle Sureshwar in Tucson. So according to the phase of our life, you know, we act appropriately. We play different roles, different parts. So even when Abai, you know, even when Prabhupada was in that picture, you know, as a businessman, he was Vaishnava, yeah, through and through. But externally, you know, it appears differently according to circumstances.
So one comment here too.
Yeah.
Like in this last picture speaks in itself a lot. Like, you know, both Gandhi actually, you know, he was highly educated in the law.
Yeah.
You know, and he was from a nice family. He dedicated everything for the country. No, he didn't have anything for his own self or his children. No, he dedicated everything.
Yeah.
And that's the destiny, that's the result he got for that.
Yeah.
And on the other side, Prabhupada, like, you know, and same thing like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he changed his, you know, his trajectory, like, you know, the path, the destination where he was supposed to be. You know, he was supposed to follow Gandhi, and definitely Prabhupada would have been most frustrated,
Yeah.
seeing the end in such a tragic way.
Mm.
No?
Yeah, because is there a Gita handy? Prabhupada mentions one Gita purport about them meeting in Atava Bahunai, it was a 6th chapter. What happens when you, after long practice of yoga, you take birth in a family of, yeah, Srimatam Suchinam Gehe. Okay,
So this is a data from Radha article.
yeah, that's good. That's all right.
Yeah, this is bigger font actually. And
Either one. Oh, this is good. 6, yeah, right, bigger font. 642 or 3. Reports, Prabhupada mentions. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the verse is, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. And then somewhat into the purport, Prabhupada says, I'll just read. Birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. So Prabhupada said, my father was a pure devotee. He dedicates Krishna book to my father, Gaur Mohan Dey, who was a pure devotee from birth, and then he said, somehow he connected with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who said he's his eternal father, Bhaktisiddhanta. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. And then Prabhupada says, fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self, referring to himself, had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord. And both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. And then the last line, Prabhupada says, later on we met by the order of the transcendental system. Krishna had Naren drag him to the rooftop. It's by the arrangement of Lord Chaitanya. Okay.
Yeah, Maharaj often gives this quote. The Prabhupada said, like, his whole life and never performed any simple activity.
Yeah, that was in a letter. Yes. Yeah, there's one letter to, I forget, Bojadev. Sometimes devotees would write letters asking Prabhupada about his previous life. And Prabhupada said, this is not an appropriate question. But he said, in my whole life, I never knew what was intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, or gambling. Although because I was born in an aristocratic family, I had ample opportunity for these things. There's even, Prabhupada told us that the lady he married, Radharani Dey, he didn't even like her. He didn't like her. He wanted to marry another girl who was like one of these dark-haired, intense Bengali beauties, a real beautiful Bengali girl. And his father knew that Abhai had his eyes on this other girl. So here's how Gaur Mohan handled it. So Gaur Mohan, he took Abhai to the girl's house, the girl that Prabhupada liked. And then, well, of course, and they were aristocratic family too. And so the father came out, she was from a very good family. So Gaur Mohan, to completely kill any opportunity for Abhai to marry this girl, said something to the girl's father. He said, does your girl dance? And that was the equivalent these days of saying, is your girl a prostitute? Because that was the import of it. It was like, no, she doesn't dance. She's, she's a protected girl. She doesn't even go out in public. She's not to be seen in public, and she doesn't perform on, she's not like one of these, showgirls that are performing. So the guy was insulted because, as you know, to this day in India, amongst better families, although it's changing, marriage doesn't mean just a boy and a girl get together. It's like families get together, right? So when Gaur Mohan insulted the father by asking that question, does your girl dance? That killed the whole thing. But Prabhupada didn't want it, he wanted to marry that girl. But so what did Gaur Mohan say to Prabhupada about that desire?
That's a good thing for you.
Yes, it's good you don't so much like your wife, the girl that you're going to marry, because it will be later easier for you to renounce later on. And that's actually true. That's what happened. I mean, Prabhupada was very dutiful. He didn't cheat on his wife or leave his wife, whimsically, but he lasted 36 years from 1918 to 1954 in that Grihastha ashram. It was only when the whole thing became impossible, when it became an impediment, as Prabhupada writes in another Gita purport, that he turned on his heels and walked out, and they never saw him again. Okay, so next time, that was his mission's roots, and now the next lesson, continuing the horticultural metaphor, is ISKCON branch. We go from roots to branch. How the whole thing manifested as a branch of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Are we done? Okay. Thank you, Prabhus. Tune in tomorrow night for more.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhu.
you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you,
Gauri
Prabhu.
Prabhupada.
Essentials.
Hare
Srila
Krishna.